Hey there, writer rebels. Have you ever been in a situation where you're trying to run your author business, but your entire life is getting in the way? Well, if that is the case, I have recently kind of been through that situation, and I just wanted to discuss what you can do when sometimes you just can't. Hey everyone, it's me, Scarlett Kol, young adult author, YouTuber, and storyteller, and I am here today to talk about those times when you just can't do anything. So, first off, before we get started, I did want to note that I am not wearing any makeup. I have nothing on, not my signature red lipstick, none of that stuff. And I did that for two reasons. One, I felt that it fit very well with the theme of this video because sometimes you just can't pull yourself together to get those things done. And secondly, I found it really, really interesting because there is one video that I have out there that I didn't wear my red lipstick, or at least the sit down videos. Vlog videos, you get me as you get me. But for my sit down videos, I have only had one video where I did not wear red lipstick. I wore like a different color that was a little bit more muted or whatever. I got comments about that. So I thought it was awesome that I had built kind of this brand that people expected this from me, but it was also this double-edged sword and something that I'm going to be talking about in this video about the fact that I had built up this brand and persona online that people expected me to follow. And when I didn't do that, even for 1 week, and I was still made up, it was just a matter of I had changed the shade of my lip color and it was a lot more subtle than I normally wear. And all of a sudden, people took notice. So this is the type of stuff that I wanted to talk about this video because so much of our author lives, we are putting ourselves out on social media. We are put out for public consumption. And when we do those sorts of things, we build expectations, even just within ourselves and with our readers and those people that follow us. But what happens when you get to that point in your life or just seasons in your life where you can't meet those expectations, whether the ones you set for yourself or the ones that the public is expecting from you? So I recently went through a period like this. I have a full-time job and then some. I've discussed this before, and I got really busy. It was really, really difficult for me. It was year end. I'm a CPA, which is a professional accountant. So I had a year end that I need to deal with and an audit. And unfortunately for me, I just had to put my author life on hold for a while. And my author life exists in a lot of different platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, as well as I was releasing a book at the same time, which was definitely my own mistake. But I was trying to do all of those things, finishing that book, doing the promotions for that, keeping on top of all of that stuff while I was trying to do that part of my life that needed more attention at that time. Plus, I have a family that I had to deal with. I have, eating and sleeping and breathing that I needed to get done and all of those sorts of things. And not everything could be done all at the same time. I've heard that quote before that you can do anything, you just can't necessarily do it all at the same time. And I was at one of those points where unfortunately, a lot of my author life was being squeezed out. So I did not intend to skip videos at that point. I ended up on the Thursday when the video was supposed to be coming out. I didn't even realize what day of the week it was. And then I realized that, hey, at this point, I should have had a video up already. And I was working. I was actually out of my home office. I was working in a car while I was trying to have my son at hockey tryouts while I was working and trying to do all of these different things. I didn't even realize what day of the week it was. And then I clicked that I should have had a video up. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go live. But I couldn't even think of anything. Like my brain was so focused and so into the stuff that I had been doing for work that I had no creative juice left. I didn't have anything that I could come on and talk with you guys about. I even considered just coming on and having a chat, but I knew I wasn't prepared and I didn't want to be just putting that out there. So after that happened, I had to reconfigure things a little bit. I was right in the middle of a release of lead up to a release of a book, and I realized that I had dropped some balls here, and I just was totally flustered as to how it had gotten to this point. But sometimes that just happens and you just can't do it. Don't get me wrong, if you're on YouTube or anything else, there's nothing wrong with taking a social media hiatus. There is nothing wrong with, missing posting some days. There is nothing wrong with any of that. It was just a matter of I had built up this expectation that I could still do these things. And when I didn't accomplish those things, I was disappointed in myself. So I have a few steps of what I did after to get back on the horse and get back onto YouTube and get back onto those other things that were pushing my author career forward. So, we're going to discuss some of the tips of what to do when you just can't and you come to this point where you realize that you have made mistakes, and what are you going to do to pick yourself up after that? But before we get started, as always, I'd like to thank my subscribers who keep coming back week after week and enjoying all of my videos. I really love your comments, and I love when you engage with me. That's totally awesome. And if you are just watching for the first time and you're not a subscriber, you can definitely hit that subscription bar and the notification bell below this video, and YouTube will let you know every time I put out new content. Typically, I do put out content on Thursdays, but sometimes I do take a hiatus on occasion. This one was definitely unplanned. However, going forward, if I were ever to take a break from YouTube, I would probably let people know in advance. So the first thing I wanted to mention before I get into these steps is that everybody's mileage is going to vary. If you are a writer, you don't have any of your books out, and you're just trying to balance your day life with your writer life, sometimes that can get difficult, but you don't have any readers at this point. You might be letting yourself down in terms of if you have internal deadlines or you have deadlines with an editor that you've set up, but it can really vary where you are in your author career. Like I said, I'm doing all of these different things. This is probably a lot for most of you out there. If you're on all of these platforms and you're doing all these things, and you're totally going to relate to what I'm talking about. However, if you are, maybe you're only posting on Instagram, but you know what? It can still feel just as devastating to miss with those sorts of things than it can with having a whole portfolio of stuff that you're doing. So it really just depends a lot on your personality, your lifestyle, and all of the things that you're doing. But regardless of where you are, it can be just as devastating, and these steps can definitely help for anybody who has fallen off their writer wagon. Okay, so the first thing I had to do was I needed to stop. So I had been running full steam ahead for a long period of time. I was tired. I was really, really drained. I said I had trouble coming on for a live because I was just creatively tapped, and I just couldn't do it. And the first thing that I needed to do was I needed to stop. I didn't even know what day of the week it was when all this sort of happened, and I needed to take some time for myself. And it's really, really hard when you're very busy because you're like, I don't have that time. Well, you need to make that time, and it doesn't need to be long. It can be even just a half an hour of just stopping and reflecting on those things that have happened. Recognize that, hey, you know what? Something fell by the wayside. I've messed this up somehow. And you know what? These are the things that have dropped. At that point, you also want to figure out what your minimum viable actions are. So at that point, after I realized I hadn't put up YouTube videos, I hadn't been posting, I had this book release coming, all of this sort of stuff, I had to realize, okay, so what are the things that absolutely 100% need to get done? And the realization might be, hey, I can't be on social media at all. I can't do any of these sorts of things. Or, you know what? I'm going to have to push an editor. I'm going to have to do those sorts of things. But being able to see that up front is going to be a lot less detrimental to you. For instance, if you have to push an editor because your writing life is taking a back seat, it's going to be a lot easier for you to deal with that a month or a month and a half before your editing deadline than showing up the day before and telling the editor that you do not have your work ready for them. They could possibly put in a cancellation. Maybe they can juggle you around a little bit. You might lose that spot entirely, but there's a better chance that you're going to be able to recover from it a little bit easier if you at least just take a step and realize the things that you need to give up or alter or change. Our plans change. You can go into things with the greatest intentions, but sometimes things just don't work out the way that you want them to, and that's okay. But taking a few minutes to realize the things that have fallen off your plate and what you're going to do about them is the first step in first gaining control of that again. It's really going to help probably mentally in the sense that you're not going to feel as flustered because you feel like all these things are dropping off. You are making a choice to not do them as opposed to them just not happening. It is a mental shift that will probably help you and help you get back into those things a whole lot easier. The second thing that you're probably going to need to do is make a plan for reentry. Ideally, if you're going to be taking a hiatus from your writing or your social media or whatever it is that you are needing to take time away from, ideally you will plan that stuff out in advance. You're going to let people know that you're not going to be posting. You're going to be, maybe make a video saying that you're going to be on hiatus instead of just disappearing off the face of the planet. So unfortunately, when you get into those situations where you intended to do things and they just don't happen, you haven't set the nice groundwork for people to know what to expect from you. And that's okay. For me, for instance, yes, I missed that first video, but if you'll notice, there's 2 more weeks after that. I had realized at that point that I had already messed up. I didn't put out a video, and you know what? It's okay. I didn't put out a video, but I could have rushed to try to get one out the Friday, or I could have tried to make sure that I got one the next week. What I decided to do was the fact that I wasn't ready to be getting on top of that sort of stuff again. So I chose to wait until I was ready to start making videos and posting videos again before I got back on YouTube. The reason I did this was my a plan for reentry. I could come back hastily and still be really, really stressed out about doing the things that I needed to do, or I could take my time and come back when I was ready. So this plan for reentry can obviously tie in with a minimum viable action. For me, I had also hadn't been posting on social media. So when I realized that I hadn't been doing that, I started posting earlier and I started getting back on YouTube because I knew it was something that I could keep up with a little bit simpler and that I could be ready for quicker. But I didn't go back to my regular posting schedule. I kept it very slim and then built up until I was ready again. And then when I came back into YouTube, which was helping with my release for my book. Ultimately, if I didn't have a release coming up, I probably would have stayed off my social media as well because I probably didn't need it at that point. However, I was still trying to promote a book, so I needed to at least have some sort of presence on social media. So I made sure that I had a plan for, okay, so this is when the release is coming. I'm going to need to make sure that I'm back up to speed by that amount of time. So I made a plan for how long I could go before I needed to start increasing the amount of posting that I was doing, getting back into that social media swing. So I made that plan for reentry, which was great, and it allowed me that time when I needed it, and it gave me some sense of control of it's going to be okay because I already have these plans in place. The next step is really just to learn from it. It happens. People miss things, they miss a deadline, they screw up, and it's okay. But you can always learn from that experience. What exactly caused you to be into that situation? It could be something that was totally out of your control, and that's okay. Or you might find out that a lot of the things that you're doing during that time aren't really having the impact that you thought they were having. So, you can scale things back. You can learn from that and have something to go forward with. If you've missed a deadline with someone, or even just with yourself, even if you don't have actual contractors, but you've missed your deadline, what caused you to miss that deadline? If it was something out of your control, it happens. But if it is something that, you just didn't plan very well, are you being too aggressive in your plans? Are you expecting yourself to work harder than you're reasonably able to do? In my situation, I was trying to release a book around year end. I thought I was safe enough past my deadlines that I would be okay, but like it usually happens, things dragged on in my day job that, I didn't quite expect, but it always still kind of happens every year. So I should really learn from that and either A, not release a book around year end, or B, make sure that that book is locked and loaded and I'm not actually touching it moving into the release. And scheduling all of that stuff that I need to do ahead of time. Or, if I'm getting into a busy point at work and I can see that coming, do some extra videos that I can put up in case of an emergency, or that I'm not ready to film something because I'm probably not going to be in that headspace. So these are lessons that I've learned from it. Everybody's going to be different depending on what the situation is. So what exactly can you learn from this situation and apply to future times when you end up in a situation where you just can't do anything? And the final tip is really just realize that the world is not going to end. I really appreciate, I did get a few comments of people asking where I went when I was gone for 3 weeks. But the fact is, all of my other videos were still up here. People were still watching them, all of my old content. I do apologize for those people who do look forward to checking out my stuff every week that there wasn't something there, but the world didn't end. I still released my book. It still went okay. Maybe it could have gone a little bit better. There were things in my release plan that I had to scratch because I didn't have time to do them, which was a little bit disappointing. But, I can apply them to other books and try something else. Maybe my release would have been better had I been a little bit more prepared. But the fact of the matter is, the book still came out, it still went all right, and the world didn't come to a screeching halt because I didn't post videos on YouTube or I forgot to post on my Instagram one day. In the end, the person that was the most disappointed about anything was just myself. I put all these expectations on myself, and you know what? I just didn't follow through with them. And unfortunately, that stuff kind of happens. So when you get to that situation, just realize that, unless it is actually a life or death situation, no one is going to die over this writing stuff. You're going to be okay. You have to delay a book. It's going to suck. People are going to be mad at you, but it's going to be okay. That book's still going to come out and things are going to be all right. You miss an editor deadline. Yes, not the best thing professionally, but it happens, and it happens way more than you think it does. So, you know what? You have to do what's best for you and best for your mental health and your family, and that's the best that you can do. All I have to say is I'm glad to be back. I'm really excited that a lot of you still hung out and stuck around for my videos coming up. I do have some fun tips coming up over the next couple of weeks, and I'll be back to wearing my red lipstick. So if you do want to check out my future videos, make sure you're hitting that subscription bar and the notification bell below this one. And if you did like this video, make sure you're hitting a thumbs up to let YouTube know this is something worth watching. Thank you all for joining me this week, and remember, it's all going to be okay. See you all later.